The year is almost over, but I wanted to make one last video, since I am absolutely obsessed with Path of Exile 2. Whenever I get free time right now, I am on it. In this video I'm doing an inscribed ultimatum. It's what I do when I get a little bit bored of mapping. This particular ultimatum actually drops from the final boss of Ultimatum, the Trialmaster. You essentially can sacrifice up to 20 exalts, but if you successfully complete it, you'll be rewarded by doubling your currency. My build is actually honestly amazing for ultimatums. It's helped me earn like 10 plus divines in the last couple of days. There will be a build guide coming soon, since this was an idea that I had for a really basic build that literally anyone can pick up and play right from the beginning of the game. The idea was you can get used to Path of Exile 2 with it, you can earn currency, skill gems, literally anything. This build can handle it, and I promise you it's really basic. The only reason the guide hasn't come out yet is because I keep making changes to it, and that I'm actually still busy on Christmas break. While the video is playing, I will point out the obvious. I am playing ridiculously safe. I'm letting my minions do all the work, and do I feel bad about doing this? Not at all. I just had 2 back-to-back runs where the final boss dropped 1 exalted orb in rewards and caused me to lose a lot of money. So I just want to make my money back, and some more obviously. And the other reason I'm playing really safe is I've never done an ascribed ultimatum where you sacrifice currency in reward for obviously double the currency. I didn't know if it would be a high level trial or what, so I did play it safe. So let's very quickly talk about the build and why it works so well, and what else it can do. To put it simply, this build can run almost all content very easily, with the exception of Breach, as its clear speed is just not quite there for the amount of mobs that spawn. It's getting better now, and I can somewhat do it comfortably, but my build is now 10 divines deep. When the build guide comes out, I'll be showcasing an early iteration, where every piece cost me around 1 to 2 exalted orbs each. The reason it works so well is for a bunch of reasons. The first being that we can take almost any one of the negative effects at the end of each round, and it doesn't actually affect our minions. If we get less resistances, that's fine, we're playing really safe with a 7,500 energy shield thanks to Grim Feast. If we get reduced projectile speed and every effect, I'm 99% sure that does not affect our minions. There are still a few to look out for, such as anything that causes you to get stunned or petrified, or the pillar that shoots out red laser beams that gives you corrupted blood debuff. This unfortunately shreds us and our minions. Otherwise, my advice would be to take as many debuffs as you can and try not to take the same one multiple times if you can help it, as level 1 of almost any debuff is very manageable. The second reason is our minions one-shot basically any mob, so when it comes to escorting a statue, the mobs will never get to us. Survive for a minute 30 while a shrine summons monsters, fine. Either stand in the middle, or if you pick debuffs such as turrets on the outside edge, just sit behind a turret on the edge. For the soul cores, it doesn't matter that it drains our life, since it takes it away from our massive energy pool first, which Grimfeast is constantly keeping us at an overshield from either all of our minions being revived, from walking away from us, or from mobs dying. The hardest challenge by far is killing the mobs inside of the blood rings, but once you've cleared them out, just move into the centre of the zone and tell your minions to move on top of your location, since Path of Exile 2 allows us to control our minions. I'm actually running an MMO mouse, so I've got number 4 on my mouse, which is where my thumb sits, to tell my minions to move. If I were you, I'd absolutely change the hotkey, since the default hotkey makes it absolutely useless. I don't know what I suggest changing it to if you don't use an MMO mouse, but find a button that's comfortable and change it to that. Now that we're surrounded by our minions, we're actually getting body blocked, so our minions are actually taking all the damage from mobs for us if anything happens to survive long enough to try and hit us. Otherwise, if you have debuffs like lightning rings or the blood orb that drops on you, just be sure to move out of them in time. As for the bosses, we want to do a similar thing, and we want to tell all of our minions to make sure that we have them all present in the arena before we get started. So make sure that you've told them to move out of the narrow doorways, or that they've all respawned before you trigger the boss. Then all we want to do is drop vulnerability on the boss and pain offering on our minions, and that's typically all it takes. The final boss, the Trialmaster, is incredibly easy as well. It's just unfortunately we play it very boring and very safe, making sure to recast our buffs and debuffs as frequently as needed. A small tip before going in the fight is actually spam pain offering on your minions at the bottom of the elevator. That way we can actually stack our overshield before we go into the fight. There's no point in taking any risks. Oh, and make sure to remove the support gem on pain offering that causes you to use life on use, and then make sure you put it back in before you go down the elevator. I promise I'll get working on a build guide eventually, but for now I'll show you my links, and when I make a guide, I'll put a big disclaimer saying do not use brutality on skeletal snipers, because it completely ruins their active ability, Gas Arrow. But now that I've got so much gear on, it just costs too much to spam Gas Arrow, and they do so much insane physical damage, so brutality actually becomes a big damage increase late game. Otherwise, I'm running Heft, Feeding Frenzy, Scattershot and Fork, with Scattershot and Fork actually lowering the damage output on bosses, but I really want this build to be a super basic, super simple build, so I'm not using any support gem swap outs when it comes to bossing or mapping. I want one setup to work for everything. The skill gem is actually only level 19 because I haven't got a level 20 dropped yet, but we do have plus 10 levels on this gem and we do this really cleverly. If you hover over skeletal snipers, you'll see it's not just a minion skill. It's a fire skill, it's a chaos skill, and it's a physical skill, so anything with plus levels on any of these categories can increase their level. So I've currently got an amulet that gives me plus 4 levels to fire skills, though it is a 2 divine amulet, so don't worry about that too much if you don't have the currency yet. Since this build is so basic, the idea is skeletal snipers, as many as you can manage. So quality on this gem is very important since it reduces the spirit reservation. Pain Offering is currently only at 3 links right now, being Ablation, is that how you say it? Being Ablation, Dance Macabre and Expanse, just to make sure any of my minions are in range as possible, but in all honesty, it's probably a waste of a support skill since, you know, snipers. Vulnerability is a curse that allows hits to ignore armor. We run this over flammability since we're not using gas arrow. As stated earlier, brutality removes any damage that isn't physical. So no chaos from the poison cloud, but more importantly, no big fiery explosions. So we run persistence, inspiration and hex bloom. Honestly, these are all just to make it easier in map, so it spreads, it lasts longer. It doesn't really do much on bosses, but again, I just want one setup. And then lastly is our Hellhound, where honestly I'm testing something and I can't tell if it's working or not. Firstly, the basics. Hellhound keeps us alive, so we need them tanky with meat shield and elemental army. Now for the experimental stuff. We're running Envenom to allow our hound to poison targets, which we couple with corrosion that should break the armor of the target. And then lastly, we're running Strip Away, which I actually don't think works with corrosion, but I was using it for fire exposure. I think there are probably better armor break supports that we can use, but I don't actually know how helpful this is. There's not really much else we need the hound to do, so there's no real harm in this setup. I forgot to record my passive skill tree, so I'm just going to do this really quick live. I'll give you a breakdown of where to path in what order, since this might look a little bit complicated, but I keep changing it every single day basically. As you're leveling, you basically just want to go up this left side here, and once you get to this node, don't worry about any of these. I know that might seem odd because these are loaded minion nodes, and there's a good minion node here, and all of these are actually really useful. Instead, what I would suggest you do is bank left, pick up all of these nodes. You don't actually need the extra life. Minions are strangely tanky. Once you've got those nodes, I would keep heading up, then head right, and you want to head up because Lord of Horrors is really important. It reduces the reservation cost of our minions. Once you've grabbed those nodes, you can head down here and pick up all of these nodes. All of these have to do with minions, so you get extra life, extra resists, extra damage. Late game is where I'll start picking up the jewel slots. I don't think you should worry about them early on. The ones that are obviously in the way, grab them. But for now, I wouldn't go out your way to get them. It might be worth coming back and then going up and grabbing all these nodes. You get a lot of extra damage. You get a lot of extra life. And all of my jewel slots, by the way, are extra minion damage. They cost between 1 and 10x each, depending on if you have the crit damage bonus or not. Come back and pick up these later on. These are crits. And then finally, you can start getting some of these nodes. This is a node I really didn't want to take. It reduces our max life. And our max life is being converted to both energy shield and spirit. So by reducing by 10%, we are getting less spirit and shield from our ascendancy bonuses, but it is absolutely worth it. It is a big buff, and the other nodes coupled with it are way outweigh the negatives. Plus it allows us to pick up another jewel slot and allows us to start getting more crit nodes. And down here I do have Deadly Swarm, and that's allocated in my necklace. I'll go over all this properly, I promise. It's late, so I'm just trying to give you a rough idea of what the tree looks like and where to go. Finally, once you've got all the minions, you can start working on yourself, with this one being a really big one. The int does help mana wise, which helps you whilst you're running gas arrow. As many jewel slots as you can get, and if you are over level 90, I would suggest finishing these nodes over here, so calibration, and then maybe even go and grab another jewel socket, and we'll stick another one of these sapphires in, because if you get increased damage and increased critical damage bonus, it's essentially Deadly Swarm in a 1 to 10x duel that you can just dot in everywhere. So right now I've got 5 of them, but I probably will go and get a 6th. In fact, now that I've spotted this, I'm tempted to actually drop some more energy shield and get more minion damage. That'll do for now. I'll work on the mobilitics as soon as possible, as well as a follow-up video showing how I used this build from level 2 to level 90 with the improvements that I made along the way. And honestly, this is the easiest campaigning I've done by far. I did get 8 stupid deaths, but the whole campaign took me about 18 hours, with every boss getting absolutely annihilated. Late Merry Christmas, but early Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you all had a great year. I know I did, just seeing my channel do so well, so thank you all very much for that. And I hate to say this, I really do, but you won't believe how much this helps. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy any of the videos like this, please do hit subscribe, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye.